So as they trickle in, we'll call them out. So, but I would like to go ahead and get our business out of the way here so we can get to Elliot. I'm sure you noticed on your way in, Arla had created this beautiful Leadership Warren County poster out on the table with a beautiful rendition. It looked kind of like a receipt, a long, narrow thing off of the cardboard. It was a list of every single person that has gone through the class. She would like for me, Chris, deal with me, for everyone that has been in Leadership Warren County to please stand up. Woo! Hello. All right. Very nice. All right, thank you. That's like almost half the room, Arla. All right, they are having a graduation today at 10 o'clock, correct, Darla? If anybody has the time to go and see their presentations, that would be awesome. With that, welcome to our 40th annual Economic Outlook Breakfast. My name is Christy Leisure. I'm the Area Progress Council president currently and work at GMI companies here in Lebanon. I'll now take the time to tell you a little bit about Elliot Eisenberg. He has his PhD and is internationally acclaimed economist and public speaker, specialized in making economics fun, relevant, and educational. Dr. Eisenberg earned a BA in economics with first-class honors from McGill University in Montreal, as well as a master and PhD in public administration from Syracuse University. He is a chief economist for Graphs and Laughs, LLC, a Miami-based economic consultancy that serves a variety of clients across the United States. He writes a syndicated column and authors a daily 70-word commentary on the economy that's available at www.econ70.com. I encourage you. We subscribe, and it is an awesome service he has going there. Elliot's interests include walking at least 5 miles a day and reading as many newspapers as he can get his hand on. He loves ice hockey and talking economics with large and small crowds. So with that, please welcome Elliot Eisenberg.
Wow, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I come last year, okay, it was an accident. But now I come back, now it's your fault. Don't blame me, I'm collateral damage, not you, right? But kidding aside, I got a lot to talk about. And I want to begin by saying I think we do end up in a recession here. We may not. For a long time, I thought we were going to eventually have a recession. People thought, no, 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 no. I kept thinking we're going to have a recession. Then a lot of people said, oh, yeah, we're going to have a recession. So I became part of the majority at that point. But now people are leaving me again. And I'm still out there thinking we're going to have a recession. But the latest Wall Street Journal poll came out last week. And now only 48% of economists expect a recession. So I'm in the minority now. So I'm putting it out there. But I think we're going to have a recession. Second, how bad will the recession be? That's more importantly the question. I don't think this is a bad recession. If you think back in your life, if you're old enough, I'm looking for someone old here, but no, you're all a young crowd. 74, 75, the Arab oil embargo, because that was a terrible recession. That was the worst recession since the Great Depression. That was then superseded by the 81, 82 second Paul Volcker recession, which we'll talk about all this stuff. I'll show you some slides. And then, of course, most recently was the 08, 09 housing bust, global financial crisis, and that was the worst recession since the Great Depression. Those are 3 memorably bad recessions that people remember or read about or hear about. But no one talks about the 1970 recession, 1980 recession, 1990, that's the S&L crisis, and 2000 dot-com bust. Those are kind of just less important. They weren't that bad. This will be like that. So what I want you to do is don't think soft landing, let's say here, here is a soft landing, a 10, perfect, great, stellar, 10, versus a hard landing, 0, awful, atrocious, 0, 10, 0. No, 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 no. Think of it more like if we have a recession, it's a 4. And if we avoid a recession, it's a 6. So we're talking about 6 versus 4, not 10 versus 0. That's the important thing. Think of a continuum. A great economy and a sucky economy. A soft landing is not going to give us a great economy. A hard landing is not going to give us a dead economy. There'll be somewhere we're fighting over this much distance. It's not 0 distance, but it's not a lot. So this notion of will we have a recession, I mean, keep it in mind. Don't ignore it, obviously. It matters. But it's not life or death. It's not like 08, 09, right, where the recession's so bad it was terrible for years. So this is important. So yeah, I think we have one, but no, it's not that bad. And hopefully I'm wrong. Let's look at the details. So this is GDP. GDP is all goods and services produced in the country. We all know that. There's 4 parts. C is household consumption. It's 69% of GDP. It matters more than anything else. What it does, if everything else is bad, but C, household consumption is good, we're still fine. And so far, C has been stellar, unbelievably good. We have a whole bunch of reasons, which we'll get into shortly, why they're really good. And if they stay up there, because if we're lucky, job growth stays good, I'd be surprised. Inflation falls rapidly, I'd be surprised. And wage growth stays high, I'd be surprised. But if that, whoops, I'm giving up on this one. If this were to happen, we'd be okay, because consumers with new jobs, lots of money, we'd be fine. That's what it would take to keep it going. It might, I'm not sure, but it's possible. C is super strong. I is corporate investments in plant, equipment, and inventory. It's not doing that great. The farmers aren't investing in inventory. They're not investing in equipment, with the exception of AI, although now with Sam Altman, like flying on an airplane, circling both Seattle and Silicon Valley, who knows what's happening on that story. In a plant, there's some construction going on, but mostly because of government money, the CHIPS bill and so on and so forth. So I is not doing much. Government spending had been terrific in 2023. Fiscal 23, the budget deficit in fiscal 23 was $1 trillion extra compared to 2022 fiscal 22. The administration will say it was a $400 billion increase in the deficit, from 1.3 to 1.7. In fact, it was from 1 to 2, and the difference is the treatment of student loans, which the administration booked and which the Supreme Court negated. So we can argue nomenclature, but even if we take the administration, $400 billion, that's a lot of money. We're not going to get that again. It's not going to happen. So fiscal policy is not going to be stimulative, and we have student loan repayments and so on and so forth. So I is not going to help us. G is not going to help us. And oddly enough, this year, exports fell, but imports fell even more. And that was quite shocking because the US dollar got very strong. But the US dollar got strong because GDP growth here was better than Europe, Canada, Japan, UK, Australia, and so on. Therefore, interest rates are higher. But because the dollar is strong, foreigners can't buy our stuff. Okay, that explains why exports are weak. But imports were even weaker because we stopped buying stuff. Because when we bought stuff in 2020, 2021, 2022, and by 2023 we're petered out. How many more Pelotons do you need? I have 9, you know? You just don't need more. So that was the big surprise. It's going to end. So we know C is still good. I think it weakens, and that's the critical story. But I is weak, G is weak, and X minus M is weak. 2024 can't be a great year. It's going to all depend on this, and we'll talk about this quite a lot starting, well, now. So here's the story. Let's begin with automobiles. It's a weird place to start, but our economy has residual strength. And the economy has residual strength because of the after effects of COVID. Think of COVID as going to a bar. And you wake up in the morning, you have a hangover. The hangover is a bad thing. In this case, it's a good thing. So we have a post-COVID weird excess demand thing going on. So during COVID, you couldn't buy a car, right? We wanted cars, couldn't make cars because there were no chips, because of supply chain problems. But they're going away. Those problems are going away. We have pent-up demand for experiential things because we couldn't do it during 20 and 21. So we're still driving around, we're still flying on airplanes, we're going to hotels, we're making trips, we're going to see Taylor Swift for $2,000 and think it's a bargain. And now the Rolling Stones apparently are going to go on tour. I'm not sure I want to spend $1,000 to see 3 or 4 80-year-old men jumping around on stage like teenagers. I'm not so sure, but you get my point. So look what's happening. Automobile sales have done remarkably well. interest rates have skyrocketed, right? Fastest rate hiking cycle in a bazillion years and whatever. And auto sales, okay, they're peaking out, okay, but they've done really well. This shouldn't be happening. Under normal conditions, auto sales would have been good to begin with in 20 and 21 and 22. Higher rates would have killed sales. But not now because of this COVID hangover, this post-COVID demand for stuff. And this is what's keeping our economy relatively strong. We still have money, and we have desire to buy stuff or do things that we couldn't do or buy during COVID. That's really strange. And that's why monetary policy is not having the effects as quickly maybe as we think. Here's another example of the same thing. This is overall housing starts. This is single, that's multi. This is total starts. They're back where they were before COVID began. That wasn't a great number, but it was the best number we had had in about 10 years. Then during COVID, rates go down, so we buy tons of houses. Then sales decline because single-fam collapses, multifam improves. Now multifam's terrible, but single-fam is good. This is a great trade because you get a lot more employment on the single-fam when you build a single-fam house compared to a multifam house. But sales of houses are okay. They're not great, but they're fine. Why? Because there's no friggin' existing inventory out there. Because all of you narcissistic, self-centered people refied your house, has a 3% 30-year mortgage, and you're not going to sell your damn house. So I'm 28 years old, I just got married, we have twins, and I can't find a house to buy. So builders are building homes. This is nuts. Higher rates should have stopped the damn builders in their tracks. But just like the automakers, we're building houses, not selling existing, but we're building new, and building new cars. And this is keeping our economy because of crap that we experienced during COVID. On the auto side, it was supply chain problems and chips. On the home builder side, there was supply chain problems too, but it's the refi of everybody's refiing their house because Powell dropped rates to zero that generated no inventory. So as our economy slowly gets back to normal, a true post-COVID normal, this process is taking time, and as long as it takes, our economy outperforms. That's essentially the story. Here's permits. Look at the permits. Look at the permits. Total permits. That's ridiculous. They're terrific because of this lack of existing inventory because rates were so low for 2 years. So everybody refied their house between April of 2020 and April of 22 or March and March or whatever it was. And you can see single fams like it's rising to beat the band. I mean, that's crazy. But it's explainable because of the post-COVID effects our economy has. Here's existing home sales. They're in the garbage can because there's no inventory out there. No inventory, builders build, so builder confidence isn't great. I think I have a slide. It's not great, but it's okay. So builders are sort of happy, sort of. Automakers are happy. We have some pent-up demand for stuff, goods and services. We'll talk about. This is overall spending. This is complete consumer spending. That's 70%. That's 16 trillion bucks. You know, 12, 15 trillion. We're spending our brains out. There seems to be, look at the graph. I mean, close one eye, take a finger, maybe the middle finger, and cover the ditch that's COVID, and you don't even see COVID. It's like the line's straight. But I think this is in jeopardy. And I want to hinge it on 2014. Look at 2014. The slope here, if you project this slope, goes like that. It's less steep than the slope here. This slope, if you bring it backwards, gets you there. So something happened in 14. Income went up. We'll get to this in a couple of seconds. But here, and then it went up, and it stayed up. So this spending up here is on the same slope as that, which presupposes and means that income growth here had better be roughly equal to what it is there. You with me? We're going to come back to this in a few minutes, so remember this. But this is household balance sheets. They're not doing anything. We're not getting richer. We got very rich very quickly. From there to there's $40 trillion in 7 quarters. 7 quarters, 40 trillion bucks. We could afford to spend whatever we want and buy whatever we want, and interest rates were zero to boot. Rates were low, the stock market was booming, the bond market was booming, home prices were booming. Unless you were a jackass and unfortunate enough to own nothing but hotels and office space in 20 and 21, you're doing really well, right? But now it's over. Home prices aren't doing much. They went down, they went up a bit, yeah. The stock market, it's gone nowhere in 2 years. The stock market, the S&P 500 peaked on Jan 3, I think maybe Jan 2, whatever it was, of 2022. And since then, it's gone nowhere. Yeah, it's up. We've had 9 bear market rallies. I think this is the 10th. But we've gone nowhere. So houses aren't going anywhere. Bond market's been crushed. Stock market's going nowhere. So wealth isn't going to drive our behavior forward. We're not going to go, oh, we're getting rich because our stock market's going up and I'm feeling happy and giddy. No, when rates go up, asset prices decline for a whole bunch of reasons. Cap rates go up and so on. So wealth isn't going to drive our story. Look at savings rates. There's some bankers in the room. No, not one, huh? Lying sacks of crap, obviously. Oh, you are, okay. So you lie and you're a banker, is that it? Okay. What's your bank? What's your bank? Are you a sponsor? Are you a sponsor? Oh, I can't crap on you then, okay. You're a great man. You are Abe Lincoln, maybe the 2 greatest Americans of all time. Kidding aside, look at this. Look at savings. So Q3 GDP was spectacular, right? Q3 GDP was 4.9%. I mean, an out of your skin game. It was so phenomenal, it boggled the mind. Anybody remember what the first half of 22 GDP was? Anybody here? It was negative. We had 2 straight quarters of negative GDP growth in 22. Q1 and Q2 both negative. Anybody here think that was a recession? No, it was just weird one-off data. It's true, the data is real, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't tell you anything. So Q1 and Q2 last year were awful, but 22 was a good year. Q3 was like an outlandishly great year. Quarter means nothing, and it happened. Just luck. Everything was good. Government spending was going up because we were buying all kinds of ordnance or something, whatever. Imports collapsed and so on. Part of the reason Q3 was so good is this. Savings rates disappeared. Mr. Banker here, 2 years ago, we were bringing wheelbarrows of money into your bank, and your ratios were going to hell. You couldn't lend money fast enough. Now you want to get money? Pay me 6%, right? And your net interest margin goes, right? You're not a happy camper so much. And default rates are going up a little bit, and you're a little more nervous now. This makes me nervous. The fact that savings rates are so low, despite the fact that unemployment is so low at 3.9 or 3.8, that's weird. I mean, whoever wants a job gets a job. Even though you can all get a job and employment's easy, no one can save any money? Yeah, inflation's high, I get that too, right? But this is a nervous sign. I mean, it can't get much lower than it is. So we have a savings rate that's pathetically low despite full employment, wealth going nowhere, and then credit card use is going up. Credit card use isn't astoundingly high here. Oh, it crossed $1 trillion or 1.1 trillion bucks. Yeah, this is not like the end of the world here. It's not. But it's going up quickly, and the interest rates on the credit cards are high. I get these offers, it's 0% for 12 months, some crappy bank. And then it says, oh, after that, it automatically goes up to 32.99. I'm joking. It says 26.99 or whatever it is. I go, whoa, what a deal, yeah. But you get my point. I mean, we're paying more. Non-mortgage expenses have doubled from roughly 2.5% to 5% of household spending. So we're beginning to get squeezed by high rates, even though mortgage rates are super low because we've all refied our house. So this isn't a great sign. Not horrible. Nothing here is horrible. I mean, the world's not going to come to an end. Maybe we avoid a recession if we have one, it's mild. So don't think that the world's coming to an end. It's not. It's just that the signs aren't great. And then there's why? Why can't we? Why are we using our credit cards? Why are we not saving any money? Because incomes aren't keeping up with inflation. If the blue squiggle is below the x-axis at 0, you're losing money. So the UAW workers go on strike, right? Stellantis, GM, Ford. And I read an article, I didn't do any research, so I trust them on this, that they said they're financially worse off now than they were 4 years ago when they made the deal last time, or 2019, whenever they made the deal. And the reason is inflation in 2022 was 9.2%, peaked out year over year. Well, who the hell got a 10% pay raise? Did you pay your workers 10% more? I don't think so. He's not answering. Cat bit his tongue. Yeah, right, okay. You should have raised your hand. I wouldn't be beating on you if you just raised your hand. So you brought it on yourself, yeah. But, so workers, we're using our savings. We're using credit cards. We're reducing savings rates. This is not a sign of a healthy economy. It isn't the end of the world, But this is not going to keep going great unless employment improves, inflation falls, and wages go a little better, so the gap between wages and inflation keeps getting bigger, right? Now it's inflation's here, wages are there. You want them to rearrange themselves. That would be good, and it's starting to happen. You can see it here. But after all this loss here, a little bit of gain here is not making up for all that loss for a long time. So that's a problem. And you see it here. So this is income's not keeping up with inflation. This is total disposable income. Look at it. So pre-COVID, we're here. Remember the talk of 2014? So this is through 2014, until 2014, so through 13. Slope is shallow. And then in 2014, the slope goes up again, and it's really terrific. And from 2014 through 2020, through 2019, I guess, March 20, COVID, growth is really good. Then we have stimmy check 1, stimmy check 2, stimmy check 3. So income goes up those months, obviously. But then you see this really weak growth since then. In the last 4 months, it's declined. Okay, it hasn't declined much. So I'm not going here, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. It's not. But it's going the wrong way. Moreover, remember, spending patterns depend on how much money you have. We don't have a lot of money, spending wasn't so hot. Then in 2014, spending got better, and then the incomes got better, so spending got better. Remember the first slide I showed you way back when? But look here, to keep that spending patterns that we had from 2014 through 2019 up, we'd have to be somewhere around there. But we're not. We're here. We're down by about $1 trillion. Can you fix the slide, by the way? There should be gray bars in the background. In the background. So what am I supposed to do? Turn the computer around and make it big? I can't do anything. Can you do something? There should be recession bars. There's a recession in 08, 09. There are gray bars that aren't showing up.
That's in your slide.
I will blame you and say, no, you are the guy. You see, these bars, they're there, but they're not here. Don't blame my slides. I'm going to beat you up like I beat the banker, okay? Don't get in a game with me here. It's not a good idea. Don't fight with the newspaper guys to buy ink by the barrel. Okay, so the problem is this is not great, and that explains why we're saving. We're not saving money, using our credit cards, and so on and so forth. Not a great story. So I'm a little nervous as a result. Now, what's the saving grace? The saving grace here is pent-up demand. We want to do things. We didn't. Nice. Beautiful. If both of you can just stay there now, yeah, okay. So, pent-up demand. I mean, again, services now, we're all going, you go to hotels, hotel prices are crazy, airline prices are crazy, rock concerts, it's bizarre. Who would pay this kind of money? But people are, and they're doing it out of savings because we couldn't do things for so long, because back in 2020, if you went out to eat and get a hamburger, maybe they'd kill you because they'd breathe all over you and you'd die. So we have pent-up demand. That helps. And the other thing that helps, battery's falling out here. Oopsie daisy. Man, it's bad karma here. Yeah, it's bad karma. Well, the bottom fell out because it falls off all the time. So we thought we had this much excess COVID savings money. And then about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, we discovered no. I don't know, on the end of September, oddly enough, it says it in the slide, we discovered $500 billion of extra money. This is economic history. It's phenomenal. Economic history, this is a side note, is a lot like studying the Soviet Union. History changes regularly because we keep updating the data. We get better at the history. The quality of this improves. But if you live based on the bottom old line and suddenly it's the new darker line, blacker line, this isn't so good, right? So we have 500 billion more. So the thought was, thank you, you made up for the lack of the other problem. Okay, we're 1 out of 2. It's 500. We're okay. If my forecasts were that good, we'd be in great shape. So we thought before that we'd run out of money, COVID money, end of year, roughly, ballpark. Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco thought we actually would have had run out by the end of Q3 of 23. We didn't. We still have more money. So this gives our economy more money. We have cars that are relatively strong. We have home building that's relatively strong. We have pent-up demand that's pretty good. And now we have still excess COVID savings. Why is there excess COVID savings? Because you made a trip, had planned a trip to go with your family, you know, to Antarctica. You were going to go see like the emperor penguins, right? But you couldn't go because of COVID. Suddenly you couldn't go to Patagonia, at Buenos Aires, Patagonia, and a ferry, whatever. And you had all this money saved up. So you bought it, you added on to your house, you bought a pool, you pavers, a pergola, Peloton, other things beginning in P, I don't know, whatever. But the money's still there. You still have some left over. Because if you didn't lose your job by middle of April 2020, you didn't lose your job. And the stock market's roaring, the home prices are skyrocketing, bond market's up, things are great, you're making money hand over fist, you got leftover money. And then the government gives us stimmy checks. Okay, the stimmy checks turned out to have been a terrible idea. The government should never have given any of us stimmy checks. The government should have instead given people who lost their job a lot of money. That would have replaced their spending. But if you didn't lose your job, why the hell are you getting a stimmy check? Because then supply chains break, so supply collapses, demand goes way up, and that's one of the reasons we had massive inflation. Then the war in Europe and so on, a bunch of bad luck. But pent-up demand, excess COVID savings, and we're off to the races in spending. This is still leftover COVID phenomena. Cars, autos, excess savings, pent-up demand. This is big stuff. Now, there's things going that are great in the economy too. Don't think it's all bad news. It's not. Inflation's fallen from 9.2 to 3.2. It fell to 3 actually 3 or 4 months when energy prices drove it up, but now they've come down. So this is inventories. The most important inventory, the number here is the yellow. And you can see it generally goes between 1.5 and a low of here of 1.35. And it vacillates between those two numbers, except for recessions. So there's a recession bar, so we need here. Christine, here. And you, here, okay. Perfect, perfect, beautiful, I love it. So during recessions, it goes up because sales collapse, inventories don't rise. Okay, guys, you're stellar, thank you. You get an A+. And you can see since then, inventories have improved. Now here, inventories trough out at 1.1 inventory to sales ratio. So you have 1.1 months of inventory in the back of the office, in the back of the store. Think back to that. What does this mean? This means think back to buying toilet paper in May of 2020, or May of 21 for that matter, or chicken wings, or whatever you want. You couldn't get them. I needed a springform pan to make a cheesecake. I couldn't get it. I had to go on eBay to buy the damn friggin' springform pan. It cost me like 40 bucks for a crappy used pan. Was I upset? You better believe it. When you go to the store and can't buy what you want, the price goes crazy. So I asked some friends of mine, very non-scientific survey. I said, you know, it's hard to get toilet paper. We all agree, Kleenex. I said, okay, these are friends of mine. This is not scientific. I asked my friends, are you going to the can more often lately? Because of COVID, is this causing you to poo more? And no one said yes. Everyone said no, I'm pooing about the same time, about the same amount, same time, same amount. You know, do you blow your nose more? No. The issue was the size of the containers that the stuff came in. Prior to COVID, you pooed in the office. Now you poo at home. So you used to buy a tractor trailer of toilet paper that was bought by the landlord, and they'd fill all the bathrooms in the Empire State Building, right? Now you go to Costco and buy a 12-pack or a 24 or 36-pack and bring it home. Somehow changing that supply delivery from tractor trailer to plastic bag of 24 took them 2 years to figure out. I don't know. I'll give you a funny, I read an article recently about McDonald's, the food store, you know, fast food. It said they're going to begin to take away the self-service Coke and Pepsi machines they have in the store. And then they said, comma, it will take 10 years. 10 years? Are you kidding me? You unplug it, you put it in the back, it's gone. And I'm a smart guy, but I guess I'm not that smart. 10 years. Same with toilet paper. But the fact remains, inventories have improved. This is reducing inflationary pressures in the economy. Things are getting less. Inflation's weakening, and in many cases, declining. They really are. Our minds don't understand this, but it really happens. Now, there's a catch. The catch is we're still well below our minimum point back here. That was 1.35, and that was an all-time low for the last 20 years. We're 1.31. Went up a little bit after being nowhere for 5 or 6 months. So firms aren't investing in more inventory because the cost of carrying the inventory is higher, and the fear of a weak 24 is keeping them from saying, I'm going to buy more pajamas to sell or blenders or whatever it is, right? So this is better than it was, but not as good as it should be, and that's hurting GDP growth, and will have some impacts. This is better. Then there's global supply chain. So 0 is normal, or roughly 0, or in this case, just slightly below 0 is normal. COVID comes, it gets weaker, and then it goes crazy. And that's when we had the first COVID wave, and that's the Omicron wave. It's crazy. You couldn't rent a ship, you couldn't rent a truck. Everything was in short supply. I have a nephew, he lives in Montreal, he drives an 18-wheeler. And every 6 months, he would change jobs. Every Monday morning, he'd get his paycheck. His paycheck would clear after 6 months. He'd park the truck in the nearest parking lot he could find, put the keys in the middle, lock the car, the truck, call his employer, ex-employer, and say, the truck is now at the corner of, Smith and Maple. Pick it up, because his check for the last week cleared. He changed jobs, got a $5,000 signing bonus, and $2 more an hour. He did it 3 times in 12 months, right? June and December and then June again. That's it, it ended. He thought it would last his whole life. I said, no, it probably won't. Don't worry about it. Well, Uncle, you don't understand the trucking business. I said, no, buddy, Jake, trust me, I really do understand the trucking business. But that said, at its worst, back here, the cost to rent a 40-foot shipping container to go from the east coast of China to the west coast of the US, here, before COVID, was $1,700. Here, it was $17,000. And now it's $1,700 again. There's so much ample supply in the shipping business, they're scrapping ships faster than you could say good morning. They were buying them as fast as they could in 21, but it takes 3 years to build a ship. So now the ships are coming online, and there's no demand, and prices are plummeting. So this is all this post-COVID trying to get ourselves back to normal. It's been just a whipsaw to the economy. There's good stuff, and there's bad stuff. But this is also reducing costs. Energy costs have gone down, shipping costs have gone down, and the demand for stuff has come down too, because our house is full of stuff. We don't need to, how many of you bought new kitchen appliances? Well, we don't need to do it again. You bought new furniture. Okay, we're done, because you were living in your house all day long. You did it, but now it's done for 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is. So shipping has gotten better. And then oil prices have stopped doing anything. This is what drove inflation, partly what drove inflation crazy. This was COVID, 2 months, very small recession here. Went up from $20 a barrel on average in the month of March up to $120. Well, that causes a lot of inflation. And then it comes down. That was a shooting war. This little last bit here was the war in Europe, the stupid Russian invasion of Ukraine. It makes no sense. And one day maybe Putin will walk around the street, see his brain, reinstall it, stop the war, and prices fall. I mean, that could happen too, So there's all kinds of things that could go good or bad. But this happened. But since then, nothing's happened to oil. We have the Middle East thing back up again, right? We have the Russian thing. We got Xi Jinping having designs on Taiwan, which I think, this is an aside, I apologize, but I think this is all part of the end of Pax Americana, right? America was the world's policeman. The world was a pretty safe place. 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. We had more peace in the planet than the planet's probably ever had. And slowly our ability to project power over the planet is weakening as other countries like China specifically get strong and are economically very powerful countries. And they have their own designs on the world, and that's the way life is. But nonetheless, end of that era. But that having been said, oil prices are very quiescent. So you have oil prices that are quiescent, transportation costs that are quiescent, inventories that are up. This is all good news. And the service sector of the economy, roughly half of GDP, is services. It's okay. I wouldn't say it's spectacular. As long as it stays above 50, we're out of recession. It hasn't been beating the band lately, but it's okay enough. So I'm happy. This is good because consumer spending is strong. It's driving this. Manufacturing, by contrast, has now been in recession for almost a full year. And you go, this is really bad. And I go, relax, not so bad. Number of employees in manufacturing in the US is like 12 million people. Number of employees in the US is like 160, so it's 8%. 30, 40 years ago, 1980, 18 million Americans were in manufacturing. We're much more productive. We make much more stuff today than we did then, even though we have 50% fewer employees, almost 50% less. So manufacturing can stay in recession. It doesn't really matter. It's very hard for manufacturing alone to drive us into recession because so few of us actually make anything anymore. We've outsourced that to other countries, right? We don't do that. So this is not great, but it's not bad enough. We had a recession just before COVID. We got out of it to go into COVID. And that recession began primarily because President Trump imposed trade tariffs on the Chinese. Now, I'm not a very smart guy, but I probably could have told President Trump at the time, you know, if we impose tariffs on their stuff, guess what they'll do? You're friggin' geniuses. They'll do it to us. And then you get a recession. But it's manufacturing, not big enough. It wasn't very deep. But that was no recession. This was no recession. Manufacturing goes into recession from time to time. Manufacturing's in now. Why? Why does manufacturing go into recession? Manufacturing goes into recession because you don't have to buy manufactured goods. Let's suppose you, God forbid, Brad, have some medical ailment. You're going to go to the hospital and get it dealt with, whether the economy is good or bad. Oh, I'll take my brain tumor to bed. It's okay. Maybe it'll kill me. I don't care. I don't want to stress the healthcare system out. I don't think so. Or you've got a kid about to go to college. And you go, okay, you know what? Maybe don't stress the college system out. Maybe just work for a year or goof off and do nothing better yet. And be on the payroll, mommy payroll. No, that's not going to happen. So services, baseball games, hockey games, concerts, rock and roll, hotels, dinners out. COVID aside, we do it. But manufacturing, you can always delay. I don't need to buy that lamp. I don't have to buy that car. I can get a new alternator or whatever it is. So manufacturing goes like this. Services generally go just like that. So this is not a terrible problem. I'm not thrilled about it, and I'm not thrilled about this, but this is fine, and this is not so important, and this is downright good, and that's downright good, and that's downright good too, and there's more. And there's the trade deficit. I mentioned this earlier. This is exports. They're going nowhere. They're flatter than a pool table. But look at imports. They're dropping like a rock. So the gap between the green and the blue, that shows up here, with a trade deficit shrinking from the worst at $100 billion in 1 month to now about $60 billion. Well, that's not so bad, because before COVID, it was 50. And the economy's bigger, there's been inflation, whatever. This is okay. Now, this is not going to continue. We're not going to keep going like that. That's not going to happen. So the big benefit we've gotten from this is over. So household consumption is likely to weaken. Exports look like they're not going to get any better. They may not get any worse, but they're not going to get any better. And then there's consumer sentiment. This is really strange. It really is strange. This data comes out twice a month, mid-month and end of every month. And this survey's been going on for like 50 or 60 years. So it's a good quality survey. I know you guys here hate Michigan, I understand. You have that game coming up end of the year, the big game. I know we hate Michigan, but economically, the data is, this is not just Michiganders, this is the whole country, including Ohioans, so okay. It's terrible data. I mean, it says the world's coming to an end here. I mean, that was pre-COVID, right? Collapse is a little better, but it's straight down. Not good. Then, on top of this, there's small business. And small business, they're miserable. So small business is hating the world. And similarly, households hate the world. So I don't trust this data like I used to, not just because it comes from Michigan. I don't trust it. COVID did something to our psyches. And all the data, when it looks at I think, I feel, how do you think, what do you think, and how do you feel, right? All that data is worse than it was. There are some that are not, but most data is worse. It's like we're all walking around now with like a dark cloud over our heads somehow. So I believe the data is real, it's true, but it's not telling me what it did. So I'm much more leery of purely I think, I feel data as a result. So don't trust pure I think, I feel data as much. But then there's data like CEO confidence. Okay, that's horrible. This was COVID. This was the housing bust global financial crisis. This was the dot-com bust. This was the S&L crisis. And that was Paul Volcker raising rates to 17%. Recession, 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 5 for 5. This is sort of, I think, I feel data too, but not quite. Because you're a CEO, right? and you're in a bad mood because the dog bit you in the morning, and you go fire your favorite economist that's now working for you. I don't like you, Eisenberg, you're out. So CEOs can actually implement what they think is happening. They read the paper, they talk to their friends, you know, they're in a Vistage group or something, and they change, and they do something. They build plant, they hire people, they find. So this is more than I feel is not good. Then there's data like the home builder index. It's not so good, not so good. This was terrible, and then it got much better because rates go up and there's no inventory. But now builders are getting legitimately unhappy because of high rates. And when they get unhappy, here you get a recession, there you get a recession, there you get a recession. Not there, but there. And there we almost had it. We'll talk about why we didn't get one there. So 4 out of 5 times the home builders get unhappy, you get a recession. That's not good. The CEOs aren't happy. Small businesses isn't happy. Households, those two things maybe don't mean so much as they used to, but maybe. And then there's leading economic indicators. This data came out this morning. I guess I didn't update the slide. It didn't change any. But what we're looking at here is leading economic indicators, expectations, leading versus current economic conditions, coincident economic data. This data comes out from the Conference Board. They put out 3 pieces of data the same day. They put out lagging economic indicators, coincident economic indicators, and leading economic indicators. This graph is subtracting coincident from leading or leading from coincident. Oh, expectations minus current, so leading minus coincident. Look how low it is. This is telling us that coincident economic indicators now are fine, and leading economic indicators are horrible. The difference is very big. That's why the number is very negative. Right? Very bad number. When it's this low, it doesn't even have to get this low. When it's this low, recession, that's coming out of a recession, 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 recession. So when the gap between the leading and the coincidence is very low, coincident good, leading bad, you get a recession. So this is bad. CEO sentiment is bad. You know, here, home builder sentiment is bad. CEO confidence is bad. It's a lot of bad. This is Chicago Fed. They have data that says we're below trend. If you're just a little below the x-axis is normal trend growth, 2% GDP. This is a little below it. So, you know, 1.8. This guy's so unhappy, he's leaving. I give bad news on GDP, he's out of here. Thanks for the Ohio welcome, Southern Ohio welcome. Yeah, you and your horse, buddy boy. This is corporate investment in equipment, capital goods. So you're buying cars, laptops, hardware, a lathe, you know, whatever it is you use to make your stuff, sell your shelves for a blender if you have like a Jamba Juice store around here. Blue is inflation adjusted, so it matters. Now, this is important. Look at this damn data. Do you see a trend here? Is it up? Raise your hands if you think this trend is up. Raise your hands if you think it's down. The lying banker says nothing. Yeah, okay, great. He sees no evil, hears no evil, knows nothing. Yeah, right. The thing here is as follows. The last 2 months, it went up. It went up to there and then there. People go, whoa, firms are investing in equipment. Don't believe it. Interest rates are very high. They're likely to stay high for a while. There's a possibility 48% of economists and so on think there'll be a recession. Are you going to be running to buy equipment now? The ROI or the ROA or the ROE on that equipment, it's got to be pretty high because rates are much higher than they were. So your willingness to buy the stuff is less than it was a year ago, that's for sure. So it's unlikely this is going to go crazy, but you get noise in economic data. Don't confuse noise for trend. This is pure noise. I mean, it's nice noise, don't get me wrong, I'm happy, but I'm not. And then there are banks, and they don't want to lend any money. If you see here, this is a survey. It's a survey, but it's an objective survey. It's a survey put up by the Fed 4 times a year called the Senior Loan Officers Opinion Survey, SLOOS, SLOOS. They're asking a question of, are you making it easier or harder to borrow money? They asked the banks. And the banks, this is commercial industrial, C&I loans for large, medium, and small firms. And they've made it much harder to borrow. And every time they make it hard to borrow, here, 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 and here, you get a recession. People think money is the grease that oils the machine. No, no, money is the machine. No money, no machine. Banks aren't lending. Now, why aren't banks lending? Aside of them being mean, nasty, absent-minded, ignorant people. The main reason is they're losing money. They invested in bonds. The bonds are worth less. They own some buildings. The buildings are worth less because they're all vacant and so on. This is a feature, not a bug. The process here is the Fed raises rates, the banks stop lending. People don't want to borrow. There's also that, but the banks don't lend. Now, as they lower rates, profits go up, stock market improves, financial conditions get better, and banks lend again. This is not that banks independently have decided to be nasty. It's that the financial conditions have pushed them to behave in this particular way, right? So I'm not picking on banks here. It's the Fed that wants, the Fed pushes. Think of the Fed as a DJ at a party. There's mood music, disco ball. There's a DJ over there. He's not on his phone. He's actually giving us some good tunes. He's playing good music. On this side of the wall, there are the businesswomen and businessmen. On this side of the wall, there are bankers. The music gets really good. The bankers come to the dance floor. The businesswomen and men come to the dance floor. They hook up. Loans get made. That's what. And the lower the interest rates, the better the music. And then they bring out some punch bowl. They spike the punch. The music's good. The rates are low. And there's tons of hooking up on the floor. A lot of loans, good for the economy. But then the Fed raises rates. They take the punch bowl away. The DJ's now playing Chopin. Bum, bum, ba bum, bum, and the party goes to hell in a handbasket. That's what this is all about. The Fed are DJs. That's what they are. And they're making a great party, but now the party's breaking up. This is not good news. And you can see here, this is transitions into delinquency. So you were making your loans, and then suddenly you're not making your loan payments. I'm a little nervous. Credit cards, auto loans make me more nervous than credit cards because without a car, you can't have a job, right? Now, car prices are higher than they were because of the lack of cars. I get it. And some of these buyers of cars have remorse because they bought used cars. So there are a normal year, there are about 16, 17 million new cars sold, but there are 40 million used cars sold. So used cars are a big market. And think back to 2021. Imagine your car broke in 21 and you had to get a new car. You had no choice. So or you get a used car. You need a car. You went to a used car dealer, and in 2021, they sold you a 1997 Chevy. Yeah, it's 22 years old, but it's a great car. And it's only $36,000. You know, it's a bargain. And you're desperate for the car. There are no other cars. There are no cars in the lot. And you buy the car. And now, 2 years later, the engine falls out of it. You need a new transmission. And you overpaid for the car, and you just ship the keys back to the car, to the used car place. That's possible. The borrower, the lender, I'm sorry. The borrower ships the keys back to the borrower. That's some of the story. I don't believe it's all. So I'm seeing some stress here. I'm not jumping out of my skin. The stress isn't as big as it was here in 08, 09. But this is not a great story. We have full employment, we have no savings, and we have increasing transitions into delinquency. I'm not like thrilled out of my pants here. I'm not depressed, but I'm not really happy here either, right? Mortgages are going, this is all without student loans being repaid. But student loans are coming back. We'll talk about that soon. And then there's small banks. Look at their loan loss reserves. So this guy projects an aura of, yeah, things are great, sure, yeah, they're fine. And in the back of his mind, no, let's save more money because all our loans are going to go in the crap can. So this is COVID. COVID comes, savings, loan loss reserves skyrocket. Then the government bails us out, and they release their savings, and they end up going into earnings for that quarter, and that boosts stock prices and whatever. And then now they go, whoa, we got a problem on our hands. Recession, no recession, let's not take chances. This is smaller banks. So we're not looking at, Fifth Third here, right? Large regionals, let alone money center banks like Bank of America and Wells Fargo and all those places, right? Now, if you looked at the big banks, the axis would change because they'd be much bigger. And they'd show this, and then they'd show that, but then they'd stop here. So if you include all banks, which are the big ones, which matter in terms of total balance sheet size, because those banks are trillions of dollars in size, the biggest banks, they're not as worried as the smaller local banks. Because the smaller local banks aren't as diversified as the big banks. The big banks, they do some lending, they do M&A activity, they trade currencies and commodities, they do wealth management. They got lots of different silos out there. So one silo craps out, they don't care, they got 3 more. But smaller local banks, not so lucky. They lend where they are. They don't have so much wealth management. They don't do a lot of M&A. They don't trade currencies and commodities that much. So their loan loss reserves are picking up what's going on Main Street. And it's not horrible, but it's not great either. So I'm giving you a lot of data that's kind of, right? This is data, and that's, nothing's horrible, but it's a lot of like mediocre stuff, right? And then we have fiscal policy. And fiscal policy is becoming contractionary. As I mentioned when I began, the budget deficit expanded, either a 400 billion or a trillion, depending on how you measure it. But that 400 billion is real money. It's real money. That's a couple percent of GDP, almost 2% of GDP. So you get good 23, it's not surprising. It's because it's being generated by budget deficit process. Now, we're not going to have that now in 24. There's no way. There's no way. It's not going to happen. At most, we'll have the same budget we had last year with the same deficit. So there'll be a 0 increase in the budget deficit. So it will not be stimulative. And then we have the deal that President Biden made with former Speaker McCarthy. There was the debt ceiling fiasco. The deal they made was we're going to, if we can't pass all 12 bills, we're going to have across-the-board 1% budget cut. That's like a quarter point of GDP. And nothing huge, but not great news either, right? And now can they pass a budget? Yeah, whatever. And then there's student loans. And student loans knock off another 20 basis points, 1/5 of a point of a percent off GDP. So a little here, a little there, less corporate spending, household spending, weekends, on a normal, on below trend growth economy, you're bucking for a recession, likely. If we break history, we don't. So we have less government spending, much smaller budget deficit that doesn't go up at all in 24. Student loans are $5 billion a month of money withdrawn from the economy. Prior to the introduction of the repayment starting of student loans, like in July or August, Department of Education paid Treasury $1 billion a month. Now they're paying them $6.25. That's the same as it was pre-COVID when students were paying their mortgages. That money's being sucked out of the economy. Yeah, I mean, someone's getting it, obviously, but they're not spending it like the people who have it to make the payments. So that's fiscal contractionary policy. And then there's the Fed raising rates. Okay, this is the history lesson. When the Fed raises rates, you get a recession. You look at this graph, there are 13 prior times the Fed's raised rates. You know, here, they raised rates, recession. Here, recession. Oh, no recession. Recession, recession, 2 recessions, no recession. Recession, no recession, 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 recession. This is like going to the hospital and talking to your doctor. What's your name, miss? Donna. That's a nice way to spell it. That's very cool. It's like a memorable way to spell it. You go to your doctor and you have a medical ailment. You need some surgery because you have some pain. Not life-threatening. You know, your back hurts or tennis elbow or something. And I'm the world's greatest surgeon in whatever it is ailment that you've got. And you come to see me and I go, yeah, I can fix it, no problem. After I do surgery on you, you'll have no pain. And you've lived your whole life. You're 25. You've had this pain your whole life. It's awful. And you're excited. I go, hold on, Donna, wait. I did the surgery 130 times last year. I have data. And I dated a different guy. 100 times, the patient died on the table. 30 times, you survived with no pain. And if you're dead, you had no pain either. So either way, there's no pain. Anesthesia, you die, and you don't remember it. It doesn't matter. So do you want to do the surgery? And you go, I don't think so. Right. The problem is it's too late, Donna. Now the U.S. economy is on the table. Powell's got 2 scalpels in his hands, and he's just chopping the crap out of us right now, like it or not. 10 out of 13 chance of a recession. 3 times no recession. So historically, you raise rates like you do now, you get a recession 10 out of 13 times. Does it mean we'll have one now? No. But it means historically, you're likely to wind up with a recession. Why didn't we get one in '64? In '64, we didn't get a recession because of the Vietnam War. So fiscal policy was very expansionary. We were fighting, we were helping the Viet Minh fight the Viet Cong. It turns out to have been a stupid, pointless war, but that wasn't the last time we've indulged in one of those things, so we haven't learned our lesson, but that's a whole separate conversation. So that's 64. In 84, what happened? In 84, we got lucky again. Vietnam wasn't lucky, but you get my point. And if you're a military guy and you're in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Guard, and so on, thank you for your service, right? Even if the war was stupid, it's not your fault, right? We didn't treat the Vietnam veterans well because we were angry at them for being in a war that we shouldn't have had, but it wasn't their fault, right? That's not right of us. But in 84, energy prices collapsed. And the combination of that with Star Wars, Reagan, Star Wars pushed the Soviet Union into the dustbin. So we had tight monetary policy, but very cheap energy, $8-9 a barrel. So suddenly we had lots of cash because energy was cheap. And in 94, 95, yeah, we had a rate increase, but what was going on at the same time? The dot-com boom for 10 years. Call me the dot-com bust. Yeah, I get that, but that's irrelevant for the conversation right now. So Netscape goes public in 94, 95, whatever it was. So we were minting millionaires by the minute. This guy's leaving now again, second time. Or your doppelganger or whatever. So we got lucky. Greenspan was the head Fed at that time. And a book came out about him calling him the maestro. And then in 07, 08, he missed the housing bust global financial crisis entirely because he was reading Ayn Rand Fountainhead for the 33rd time. And he was convinced that markets can't go wrong. I mean, what a jackass, right? So here, he gets it right because he's lucky. We think he's smart. And then when the rubber hits the road, he totally screws up. Okay, you know, whatever. You get lucky sometimes. So it's just, no one knows the future. You can't blame the Fed for being wrong. Look, I ended up marrying the woman who became my ex-wife. It seemed like a good idea at the time. It just wasn't, because no one knows the future. So this says 10 out of 13 times you wind up in a recession. That's not good. Leading economic indicators aren't good, right? Bank lending is not good. And then you have another piece of data, which I'm going to show you now and then take it away and bring it back, the inverted yield curve. You know what an inverted yield curve is. I hope you know what a yield curve is. You're so silent, you probably don't even know what that is either. But I digress. The yield curve is the relationship between time and money. And this is what banks do for a living. They screw around with time. You need money today, right? To buy something today, like a car or a house that you can't afford. You go to a bank. The bank says, here's money today. You pay us back over time, whatever. Normally, the longer you borrow for, the more you pay. Think of like a 30-year mortgage. It costs X. A 20-year mortgage costs X minus something. A 10-year mortgage costs X minus something else. Well, it's just cheaper. Because the longer they lend for, they take risk. Interest rate risk, credit risk, default risk, reputational risk, hedging risk. I mean, it goes on. There's all kinds, and there's like 10 more types of risk I'm not even thinking about, right? They take risk. They want to get indemnified for the risk. They charge you more money. But right now, the yield curve, instead of being upward sloping, saying the longer you borrow, the more you pay, now it's the longer you borrow, the less you pay. The first time I heard about this, I was in college. I thought this was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard about my whole life. That was impossible. My professor must have been on pot or something. Well, I mean, it's cheaper to, so right now, you want to borrow for 10 years, Treasury, US government, they pay you 4.4%, right? 4.4? 4.43. Yeah, he knows that. It's one of the few things he knows, yeah. 4.4%. What's a one-year Treasury at? 5? He doesn't know. He doesn't know. Call it 5. So if you want to borrow for 1 year, it's cheaper to borrow for 10 and pay it off in a year than to borrow for a year. You'll save yourself 50, 60 basis points, half a percentage point, 0.6 of a point, whatever. And that's an inverted yield curve. When the curve, instead of being upward sloping, it's downward sloping. When it's cheaper to borrow long than short, you have something weird. So you kind of, this is the inverted yield curve. And what this says is every time the squiggle goes above the red bar, the yield curve goes from positively sloped to negatively sloped. Bankers like it when it's here. In this graph, when you're here, the slope is very steep. At that point, this Mr. Banker here, he borrows at 3, he lends at 6, and by 3 in the afternoon, he's pulling out his 9-iron on the golf course. That's the 3-6-3 rule, right? You got it? Yeah, okay. Here, 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 very happy bankers. As you approach the red line from below, the curve is getting less steep. When they're touching here, 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 it's dead flat. When you go above the red curve, going up, it's getting negative, worse and worse and worse. That's pretty bad. Now, if you're a money center bank, like Wells or something, or Goldman, they're not even like a bank, they're different. But Wells or Bank of America, whatever, Fifth Third, Truist, whatever, they can manage an inverted yield curve without it hammering their business because they have other lines of business and other silos. But smaller banks don't. They do a lot of lending. When you're borrowing and lending, when the gap is tiny or inverted, it's harder to make money. This tells us something's wrong with the economy. And with the exception of '66, you can see here a little gray bar there, two gray bars here, a gray bar there, a gray bar there, a gray bar there, and a gray bar there. It's a friggin' 8 for 8. The inverted yield curve is telling you something's drastically wrong with the economy. The Fed's raised rates too much, and they're going to come down and something's going to happen. This inverted yield curve, like CEO sentiment and so on, is not great news. Bank not lending and so on, not good news. Now, you may say, oh, look at this. The yield curve is de-inverting, so it's still negative, but as it approaches the red line from the top, the slope's getting less steep. That should be good news because we want it to go up again, right? Up is good. No, not so fast. The last 5 times we've had a recession, the line starts to come down here, and then the recession starts here. Here the recession starts there. Here the recession starts there. Here the recession starts there. So what happens is the yield curve is normal, then the yield curve inverts, then the yield curve starts to go back to normal and even becomes positively sloped, and then the recession hits. And the question is why? I don't think it has much to do with the movement here in the yield curve, and the inversion is what matters. What happens is it takes time. And the US economy is so damn large, it takes a very long time to drive it into a recession. Think about it. Let's suppose we're Switzerland, small, tiny country. All they make is chocolate and watches. That's it. They make more pharmaceuticals, skiing, skiers, skiing, vacations, right? But ignore that. Think it's just chocolate and watches. So now we have cell phones. They were fearful that no one would ever buy a watch because it tells me it's 9:08. Who needs a watch? But no, now we actually buy more watches because we don't need them at all. Sales are terrific. It's conspicuous consumption, whatever. And then chocolate. Now they're fearful about chocolate because all of us are buying Ozempic and Wegovy and Mounjaro and injecting ourselves to lose weight. So we want to be healthy. We're not going to eat chocolate. So their economy could die like in 2 minutes with the watches and the chocolate. But the US economy is so friggin' large, not possible. Anything can go wrong here. It doesn't even matter. We're fine, thank you very much. I looked at the data. Katrina, Hurricane Katrina that whacked New Orleans like 10, 15 years ago now, 15 years ago, doesn't even show up in the macro data. You don't even see it. So don't worry about it. So it takes a long time to get a recession, long time. So a recession finally comes because it takes 2 years, you get the recession. And here it is, 2 years to get a recession. 2 years to get a recession. 2 years. Why so long? Because the economy is so big. Hollywood goes on strike, no one cares. Right? No one cares. Doesn't matter. Too small. Big deal. And here's a good example of it. This is months since the first rate hike. And this is consumer spending on goods and services in dark blue, goods in light blue. You can see it takes about 18 months for spending on goods and services to peak once the Fed begins to raise rates. Because if you're buying things that aren't interest sensitive, do you care? You're buying a dinner out. Do you care what rates are? You're seeing a baseball game. Do you really care? You're seeing the Reds play. Do you really care? No. Only if you buy a car or a house or buy a building or finance a building do you care what rates are. Otherwise, you don't care. It takes a long time for interest rates to work their magic. A long time. So here, this is put up by Apollo Private Equity Group. And they say that even through Q3 23, we didn't even begin to feel the effects of monetary policy because the lags are so long. It takes so long for fiscal policy works quick. You get a check or a tax cut, and you see it right away, and you spend the money right away. But not monetary policy. It goes through interest rates, which take a lot longer and slower. It's very powerful, but it takes a hell of a long time. Just because the recession hasn't happened yet only means that the recession hasn't happened yet. It may not happen, but that it hasn't happened yet is not meaningful. It's nice, but it doesn't tell us we're not going to have it. Now, if we get a recession, how long will it last? That's the Great Recession, these two recessions together, this one and that one. Since then, the recessions have all been short, with the exception of 74, 75 Arab oil embargo, second Paul Volcker, that was the first Paul Volcker recession, and the global financial crisis, housing bust. This will be a short recession, 8, 9 months, nothing bad, nothing awful. We'll get through it. We've lived through more. We lived through this. We'll get there. All right? I can give you a quick example of the difference between monetary and fiscal policy. There are some youngsters here in the audience here. I see it. So for your benefit, I'm going to tell the story. If you smoke, marijuana is legal in Ohio, right? Terrific. I should have come here a day early. Okay, it's not legal in Florida. Not that I've ever even seen or smelled marijuana. I don't know what it even looks like. But I understand that if you smoke marijuana, a joint perhaps, or a blunt, maybe through a bong, I could go on, but there's no point. It takes about 7 minutes to get high, 8. Not that I timed it, but I read an article. But if you eat marijuana, gummy bear, cookie, brownie, it takes 40 minutes. Think of fiscal policy as smoking marijuana. Think of monetary policy as eating marijuana. The impact is largely the same, but the timing is very different. If you get them confused, you're in trouble. Like if you never ate marijuana before, you read the same article I did, obviously, Aaron. So you eat one cookie, and then a second cookie, and then a third cookie, and then that monetary policy whacks the crap out of you. And that's why Powell doesn't want to raise rates more, because he's fearful that the rate hikes he's done haven't really been felt yet, and they're going to hit us, and then they'll clobber us, and there's nothing you can do about it. So that's the whole problem with monetary policy. These lags interfere. Now, labor markets are weakening. Unemployment is going up. Look at this graph really carefully. Unemployment goes up. Unemployment goes up. Unemployment goes up. It 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 goes up. Recession, 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 recession. Every friggin' time unemployment starts to rise, with the exception of that one, in 94, 95, you get a recession. Every single time. This is starting to go up. Because the long lags in monetary policy take a long time to affect. So chances are the recession is going to hit us because interest rates are going to continue to eat their way through and impact us more, driving unemployment up, which pushes us into recession. Does it guarantee it? No. Maybe we avoid it. I hope we do. But history says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for 8 says we're going to get a recession. Inverted yield curve says 8 for 8. Rate hikes alone, 10 for 13. Leading economic indicators, 8 for 8. CEO sentiment, 5 for 5. I mean, you get the idea here. You're fighting history. Now, the reason the history is different is because of COVID. COVID has messed up the economy, and that may give us enough energy. Car sales good, auto sales good, pent-up demand, excess COVID savings to push our economy strong for longer so that we can fight off the high interest rates and the Fed begins to lower them in time before we run out of money and pent-up demand and we avoid the recession. I mean, that's what we're in now. Can we build enough runway, keep building runway before the plane lands? The plane lands, no runway, we're in trouble, right? We have a hard landing, right? We're in a race against time. Now here, this is the work week. It's shrinking. You can't have a great economy with a shrinking work week. We're hiring people and we're laying them off at the same time. So I'm hiring you. What's your name? Ashley. I say, great, I'm glad to have you. You're on board. Looking forward to coming to work or staying home or whatever we do. Great. And then I say, Sean, come to work an hour late on Monday mornings. Hiring and idling at the same time. This can't go on. Either we're going to hire you and keep him employed, or we're going to fire him and keep you, of course, because you're a better employee. You can't do both. You can't keep hiring and laying off. You work for the bank too, right? Don't you? Yeah, okay, right. Yeah, okay. So this is not, and this decline in hours worked, it's only like 40 minutes a day, from 35 hours to 34.3, 40 minutes, 42 minutes. That's 3 million workers. So you got a problem here. So this is not good. Then there's overtime hours. They're atrocious. Recession, 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 recession. So 5 for 5 on this one. This one's not bad, the work week. It's normal. If it gets lower, I'm worse. I'm nervous. We're okay. But it's weakening. This is weak. And there's quits. Before COVID, this is before COVID, 2.3% of the population quit their job every month. Very high number. 2.2 at the housing boom, and 2.4 at the dot-com boom. The peak of COVID, it was 3. That's when my nephew was changing jobs every 6 months. Wages were going crazy. Inflation was 9.2, and a shipping container cost $17,000 to rent for a trans-Pacific transit. Now it's down to 2.3. It's still pretty high by historical standards. Only 2 or 3 times in history has it been that high. It's got to come down a little bit because there's demand for workers is too strong. And you can see it here. This is wages. Pre-COVID, we were here at 3%, 3.5, 2.5, 2. To get inflation down to 2%, what the Fed wants, you can't have wage growth more than 3. Because 3% wage growth minus 1% labor productivity growth gets you 2% inflation. That's the simple story of inflation. Because if wages keep going up too high, everything costs more money because wages are a huge chunk of the overall economy. The Fed cares about wages a lot. They're too high. Now, they've come down from 6. This is all meaningless. This is you fire your low-wage workers, and then here you're hiring lots of low-wage workers, and they're messing with the COVID. It's all COVID-related. But from here down, that's a real story. This is good news. It's gone from 6 to 4. It's got to come down to 3. We're not there yet. The Fed's not going to lay up on rates when the systemic level of wage inflation is 4%, which is 1% too high to get us to 2% overall inflation. Inflation remains too high in large part because of this. Now it's coming down, but not coming down a lot lately. I'm a little nervous. Now, there's mitigating factors that are very important here, and that's the supply side of the economy. The labor force participation rate's going up. People are going back to work. Why? A, they can go back without dying, because COVID's gone, and B, they've run out of money. 80% of the population has no more excess COVID savings. The COVID savings that remains is by and large all in the upper 20, 25% of the population. The bottom 3/4, if they want to pay the rent and the car payment and the mortgage, they got to go work. Government paid us not to work, so we didn't work. Now the government's saying, maybe you should work, and we're going to work. So this more people working, higher percentage of working is good. And then there's immigration. During COVID, no one came, no one traveled, you couldn't. There's pent-up demand to immigrate. So last year, 22 was the first year there were more than 1 million green cards issued in this century. So there's more workers and more people are working. This makes it easier to get to 3% inflation. So maybe if this keeps going up and immigration stays good and this pent-up demand remains for a little bit longer and the Fed lowers rates a little quickly and inflation weakens a little quicker than we think, we avoid a recession. This is a key part of it, key part. This is monthly job growth, net job growth. So it's new jobs minus loss of jobs. Do you see a trend here? Yeah, you see a trend. But sometimes you go up, 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 up. This is 2 years, 2.5 years of data, roughly. 2 years of data. And you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ups, dramatic ups, despite the down. Rates are high. There's no way this is going to start going up. The question is, how low does this get? If it stops at 100,000, which is the axis right here, we're fine. No recession. If it falls to 0, bam, you got a recession. Or almost certainly, because unemployment starts to go up. And once unemployment goes up, people get nervous. They're fearful of losing their job, and they stop spending. Firms stop investing. Party's over. Right? That's a loss of confidence. And that's how most recessions occur. COVID aside, that's how recessions occur. And here's a fascinating rule. This is a woman named Claudia Sahm discovered this for different purposes. And she found out that if the unemployment rate goes up by 0.5 percentage point from its trough, which the trough was in March, right? If it goes up by 0.5%, and it's all 3-month moving averages, so you're twisting the data here a little bit. You get a recession, 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 every friggin' time, like the inverted yield curve. This is a perfect indicator. That doesn't mean it'll happen again, but we're now at 0.33. If the unemployment rate rises by 1/10 of a point next month and the month after, that number's above 0.5. and that gives you a pure inflation, recession indicator. Doesn't mean recession will happen. This time could be different because of COVID, right? 64, 84, 94, all were no recession years. 2024 could be why. They all end in 4. So you will see. Now, we'll talk about inflation, then we'll wrap up. This is evidence of inflation. I spy with my little eye something that's red and tiny. Right, it's crazy, right? So this is the source of inflation. Headline inflation's blue. Peaks out at 9.2%, June of last year. Falls to 3, and then energy drives to 3.7, and now it falls to 3.2. It's made big progress, but it's got to get lower. Economists ignore blue. They don't care about blue, because blue includes food and energy. And we buy a lot of money, we spend a lot of money on food and energy, but food and energy just bounce around because of crop failures, right, weather, and war. And the monetary policy, the federal government, the central bank, they're not going to raise rates because of a crop failure in what, Saskatchewan or something? Or New South Wales? That's just stupid. So they look at the red. The red gives you a much better indicator of overall inflationary pressures here in the US. A much better indicator. So red is what we look at. I know it includes no food and energy. It seems like the stupidest thing in the world, but it's at 4%. They want it to be 2. 2. It's too damn high. This is too high, coming down nicely, but this, what they care about, is 4. Moreover, the Fed cares about wages. I talked about wages being too high, 4% wage growth, right? We have to get it down to 3. If you care about wages, where are you going to see wage inflation most quickly and most observantly? In services, because services are mostly wages, right? You get a haircut, it's wages and a bit of rent. Legal services, financial services, accounting services, right? That's all wages and a little bit of rent. You want a loan, it's wages with a bit of rent. A haircut, wages. Manicure, pedicure, massage, wages and some rent. So keep the blue the same and change the red. The red now is wage inflation. Oh, it's friggin' 5%. The cost of things, see here, services, service inflation is 5%. The Fed's not cutting rates. It's too damn high. The Fed should cut rates. The Fed shouldn't even raise rates in July. They shouldn't have raised rates in March either. They're raising too much because the lag effects are very powerful and they haven't appreciated, or they do, but they don't, whatever. So what's going to happen with inflation? So the current Fed funds rate's 5 3/8, between 5 1/4 and 5 1/2, the midpoint, 5 3/8. They raised it last on 7/26. They didn't raise their next meeting. They didn't raise on the next meeting on November 1st. And the next meeting is on the 13th of December, and they're not going to raise because the labor market's weakening, wage growth is going down, and the lags matter here. The Fed's not going to raise. The Fed's done. The Fed's finished raising rates. It's over. It's history. I'll stick my stake in the ground until you're not going to raise rates. Now, one last thing is keeping the economy afloat. I've talked about cars. I've talked about housing. I've talked about pent-up demand. I've talked about excess COVID savings. Now the money supply. This goes to our banker friend here. Doesn't say much. Doesn't seem to be very observant, but seems otherwise nice guy. If you look at this graph, when the money supply shrinks, you get a recession here, 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 here. So these are 3 big declines, almost 5% or more than 5. And you get 1 recession there out of those 4, but they're not so big. This is a huge decline in the money supply. If you look at the isolation alone, just the bottom right-hand corner, you go, whoa, we must be having a terrible recession because the money supply is shrinking so rapidly. But you can't look at it in isolation. You've got to look at the COVID effect. That's the COVID effect. It's huge. So money supply grows well because we all refinance our houses, we refinance our boats, our airplanes, whatever we own, right? You buy a building, you get a low-rate mortgage on your 5 years on a commercial property or something, right? So we're living large on that. Now, I know you have to get refied, you got a problem, but until then, we can live on this even though we have this for some period of time. Eventually, this will eat us, but not yet. So cars, housing, pent-up demand, excess COVID savings, and massive increases in the money supply prior are giving us more energy to keep going and delay the effects possibly of interest rate hikes, right? Now, a little bit on housing. Oh, no housing, I'm sorry, I apologize. And now here, we'll wrap it up. For those of you who don't know where you live, I've put a little arrow. Now, you're very far south. I understand you're somewhere like down here somewhere. I'm not exactly sure you know where you are better than I, but that's Ohio. So you're like, this is 10 years of growth. You're like lower average, right? You're weaker. But you're weaker because you live in a bad part of the country. It's not your fault. The Midwest, upper Midwest, not the world's best. People moving here, they're moving there. You know, there's 3 blotches of country you move. You move to the south, you move to Texas, and the Intermountain West, between the Cascades. There's the Sierras, I'm sorry, and the Rockies, right? The Sierras are here, the Rockies are there. That's where you move. That's 10 years of data. More recently, in 2021, Ohio was 37th. You lost 0.2% of population. Nothing huge, but again, not great. 37th out of 50. You know, you're the bottom third of the country. 22, latest data, you're 36th. Yay, you improved. You're now down 0.1%. You need people. You need people. You need people to have wild, unprotected intercourse and immigration from other states. Tell them moving to Ohio is great. It's a great state. You got White Pad Air Force Base, which has the greatest airplane museum in the friggin' world. I've been there 3 times. I'll go again. It's so good. I love going to Dayton to see that damn air museum, right? You have reasonable house prices. You know, you got a football team in Cleveland that may make the Super Bowl. I mean, this is possible, right? Magic things here. Yeah, it's the Cincinnati Bengals. You're also great. Oh, you have a football. Is your quarterback injured or something? I'm not a sports fan. I read the Wall Street Journal, and that's about all I really know from sports. So I'm making a fool out of myself here. I apologize. But you need people. Now, southern Ohio is much stronger than northern Ohio, right? Cleveland up there. Columbus is good too. But you're stronger here. But you need people. You've got to think about how to get people to move here. Good, good culture, 4 seasons, reasonable home prices, advertise the crap out of Ohio. You're centrally located to half of the country is within quick driving or flying distance of the country. I mean, you've got an airport that's spectacular here with the DHL. You're one of the largest airports of packages in the world, right? I mean, you got a lot going for you here. You do, but you got to push. You want to differentiate yourself from the crap can of Michigan, right? Now I'm pandering, okay? Come on, give me something here, right? So this is your big issue, people, right? Now, if you look at overall strength of the economy, this is a year and a half ago. Great, country's great. A year ago, good. Now weaker. And Ohio's gone with the country from strong to weaker. They weaken too because the country's weakening a little bit. We may not get a recession. Hopefully we don't. We'll see. Lastly, let's wrap it up. So this is my takeaways from 22 when I was here a year ago. I said 22 will be okay, 23 not so much. 23 was good. 23 turned out to be okay. We'll end up with 0.75% growth and 1 of 4.9. So it'll be a lot stronger than I thought. The Fed will keep raising rates. I was right on target on that one. We'll create 400,000 more jobs. I was spot on that one. I said inflation peaked. It did peak in June. That was good. Spending on services will rise. It did, but it conked out earlier this year. So I give myself like 4 out of 5. I did pretty well here, right? That's like a B. For an economist, that's excellent. Now, what's going to happen this year? 24 ain't going to be a great year. It can't be. Household consumption, I think, is in jeopardy. Corporate spending on plant equipment inventory, right? Government spending, weak. And exports minus imports, not going to be a stellar year like it was last year. The Fed maybe raises rates once more. Maybe. I don't think it does. Maybe it does. But it doesn't matter. The question you have to ask yourself as businesswomen and businessmen is, if they keep rates up through June, how can you survive? Will this work? Whether they raise them once more or not, it's immaterial. It's if they keep them at this rate or a 1/4 point more through June, will you be okay? And how will you insulate yourself for 6 or 7 more months of relatively high rates before they begin to come down? That's the key question. Job growth should keep slowing. We're now close to 175,000 a month, and we've been slowing for a while. How low do we get? If we get to 100,000 or better, we're fine. We avoid a recession. If it gets below 100,000, that's when unemployment starts to go up, and that begins to get nervous. Inflation's continuing to decline. The key is it's got to decline fast so that the Fed can say, we're going to cut rates. If wages growth stays at 3.5%, if inflation falls to 2, real wages are pretty good there, 1.5. The Fed lowers rates. We still have pent-up demand, a little excess COVID savings. We avoid the recession. That'd be great. I want you to follow unemployment very closely. If it rises a couple tenths of a point more in the next couple of months, I get more nervous. And inflation's got to fall, 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 fast, fast, fast. That's the key. This is my name, my cell number, my phone number, my Twitter handle, my website, my email address. And I put out 70 words that you mentioned earlier, Christine. It's 70 words on economics. No graphs, no ads, no charts, no links, no photos. If you're interested in getting it, and I hope you are, the easiest way is to take your phone, text the word bow tie, one word, to the 5-digit number 66866. You'll be forwarded for an email address. You'll hear from me every day until you die. And if you die, not when, but if hopefully you don't and you live forever, it hasn't happened, but it could. Methuselah lived till 987. Sarah, Abraham's wife, died at 126. So people can live a long time. Methuselah, the longest lived person in the Bible. I forgot where I was going to go with this. Yeah, if you end up in hell like I am, I'll continue sending you economic updates. I hope I've given you insights into the overall economy. Surprisingly good, but I think weakening for a whole bunch of reasons. The labor market, very good now, but doesn't look that good going forward. Inflation clearly weakening, and the Fed eager to lower rates, but they won't tell us that, because once they tell us they've stopped raising rates, the question becomes, when will they cut? And they don't want to go there yet. That's why they keep saying, oh, we may raise rates, we may raise rates, we may raise rates. Because they don't want to get to the next conversation they have to have. So we'll see where that goes, but we need to see inflation fall for the Fed to cut rates quick, and we avoid the recession. That's what I hope happens. We have time for Q&A, or probably not at this point. Couple questions, one or two. In the back. Please. Right. Okay, so commercial is it's office space primarily. Occupancy rates. And they're higher, but the effective occupancy rate's lower because they're paying the rent but not really using the building. Right. So you got shadow occupancy, if you will. And that's a problem, there's no doubt. And a bunch of banks are going to go under. There's no question they're going to go under because they're overinvested accidentally in too much office space. I mean, hotels are doing okay, retail's doing okay, right? They're generally okay, but it's office that's really the big problem. But it's not big enough to tear the whole economy down. It's not large enough. Enough to wreck some banks. But you know, the FDIC comes in and they bail out everybody and blah, 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 and like they did last time. I mean, that was a big intervention. When those three banks, it was huge. Both the Treasury and the Fed came in guns a-blazing to protect us from a bank run of magnanimous, huge proportions. What's not sustainable? Well, they have to, if the banks, they have to bail out the bank. Not the bank, the depositors. The employees all lost their jobs, CEO lost their stock, we don't care about them. But if the depositors lost their money above $250,000, which is FDIC insurance, then we'd all start pulling money out. So then all the banks would have a real problem. So the Fed had, and the Treasury had no choice. But Congress just raised the limit to $500,000 or whatever it is, but that's a whole, I mean, Congress is dysfunctional, so forget about that. But the office space isn't a big enough problem. It won't, it's not big enough. It's a problem, but not big enough to have a recession all by itself, no. Any more, sir, with nice hat.
I have 3 college students here, and I don't think they're afraid of what the job market may look like later on, but I think they're concerned about things like interest rates. And the increasing housing prices.
Oh, whoa.
How will they be able to afford to live and develop wealth?
So the question was, Professor is asking about the new generation, what's they call it, the A generation or something, what? Zs, the Gen Zs. How are they going to manage with housing especially? Yeah, it's going to be quite a struggle. We need to see interest rates fall and house prices stop going up. That's what you need to do. I think, reframe here a little bit. I don't want to be your age again, no interest in that. But you're going to have a longer life than I will, because healthcare is better than is, diet's better, and so on and so forth. Lots of things are better than they were, cell phones and stuff, transportation. So you've got a lot of things going. You don't have housing. Housing's a big problem. You're going to have to end up living, it seems, longer with housemates. Boomerang back with your parents. Oh, God. That sounds atrocious. Yeah, I love my daughter, but not that much. I love her far away. Live with housemates longer. Don't give up on home ownership. And the other solution to employing home ownership is move to a place where you can afford to buy a house, right? If you can't afford one in San Francisco, move to Cincinnati or Indianapolis. So there's lots of places you can afford to buy a house. The coastal communities aren't going to be, East and West Coast are not going to be them for a while. You can win the lottery and things can happen. But do save your money, invest your money, right? And plan to buy a house at some point. It is, generally speaking, a great way to form wealth. But maybe have to move to some place you didn't think of living before to accommodate what you can afford based on the incomes that you're earning, right? Because the coastal communities, both on East and especially on the West, have gotten very expensive. But remember, you have other benefits that society is bringing you, right? Like lifespans and so on. That's not a bad thing. Living to 100 could be a pretty pleasant thing. I know it's unimaginable at your age, but one more question and then we'll wrap it up. Is there another question? I guess not. Christine?
There it is. Oh, the DJ left.
The DJ left. Oh, he's there.
Oh, you're going to. Dr. Eisenberg, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we go, I'd just like to quickly verbally recognize our sponsors, Advix, Bricker Graydon, Conger, thank you for sponsoring, Festo, LCNB. Tyler, now you know why you don't sit next to me. I pat you on the back as a banker and you're toast the rest of the morning. And Sinclair Community College here in Mason. Thank you very much for your support. Everyone, take a breath and enjoy your Thursday. Enjoy your family and your friends on Thanksgiving. And have a good day. Oh, I said that earlier. Okay. Thanks, everyone.